What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today it is my number 26 team in my 2023 NFL Deep Dive series. It's the LA Rams. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos in this series. Done a whole bunch already, and probably done a whole bunch since you've started watching this. And leave your comments in the comments section. And I just want to address something ahead of this video that I've gotten some comments about, like, how do I come to the conclusions that I've come into? And I'll start with sort of how I figure out the coaching staff. I rank every head coach, in my personal opinion, from best to worst. And then I sort of have like these tiebreaker procedures because there's some coaches where it's almost like tiered to a degree. So then my tiebreaker is usually the coordinators. And after that, I move on to position coaches. Didn't really have to do that a whole lot because generally I was much higher on some coordinators than others, especially on some of the lower when you get into like the 20s. So that explains why Frank Reich and his coaching staff is 27th. Not high on Frank Reich. I like the defensive coordinator, don't really like the offensive coordinator. He is a first-year offensive coordinator, so that's why they were ranked so low. So this Avengers gathering crap or whatever that people were talking about, man, Panthers fans, you guys became delusional real quick. Good for supporting your team, but relax a bit. And then for the players, of course, I did sort of the exact same thing. Ranked each position group sort of how I felt it would go. And then once I got to areas where I was like, it's super close, I generally yielded to the PFF grades. I felt that was a good neutral place to go, even though I'm not that high on PFF grades. It was just the most neutral area I can go to sort of differentiate guys who might have been, ranked a little bit higher than others in particular aspects of their game. It was also quite helpful with the pass blocking, run defending, and all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of where I came to those conclusions. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the Rams. You kind of knew this was coming. This was sort of the plan for the Rams, really, at the end of the day. They mortgaged their entire future for a couple years to win a Super Bowl. And the final piece of the puzzle was trading for Matthew Stafford and then Von Miller in the year they won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. In any other scenario, if they don't win the Super Bowl, every single person on this coaching staff and front office is fired because they are a disaster now. They are an absolute disaster. The salary cap space is brutal. They have to rebuild from that aspect. They really have just two players on this roster that you can even remotely think they can build around for the long term, being Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald, who, when you say long term, both of them are coming off of injuries, which at their age, if you start picking up injuries at this point in your career, generally that means you're maybe on the downswing. Now, I still think that Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald are among the elite at their positions, and until there is some general pattern of decline, that's where they're going to stay, in all fairness. However, you look at the remainder of this roster, it is so bad. It is horrifically bad. It's almost like, and you play Madden and you just go into the free agency pool and you try to build a team using just free agents and not anyone that's signed to a current team at all. So no one on a top 53 roster out of 32 teams. That seems like what they've done here. They've got a lot of rookies, a lot of second-year players, and a lot of guys that you're just wondering, on any other roster, do they get on the field? I think it's particularly true for the defense, which is why I think their grade is going to be so low here and get them down to 26. I'm actually quite high on them compared to most people, which was quite shocking. But I'm also on the assumption that the offense, is at least going to stay healthy. I don't assume injuries for the most part. So, when you have Matthew Stafford, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Cam Akers. You got a decent little group there. The offensive line is okay in certain aspects. It's just a matter of finding the top five. So, barring injury, the offense is going to be at least somewhat efficient, you hope, with some of the upgrades that they're going to have. It's really the defense. If Aaron Donald doesn't dominate every game, they might get 40 put up on them every week. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. A lot of rookies and second-year players are going to get on the field, And really outside of like maybe 2 or 3 guys on that defense, you're not gonna see a lot of veteran play on that defense. It's gonna be really up to this coaching staff to put them in a position to succeed. But I do like certain aspects of this coaching staff. They really fell victim to sort of like the tiering system that I was talking about, though. So they're not going to be as high maybe as people think, but let's start with them right now. So this is my 13th ranked coaching staff in the NFL. It's close though, guys. So like Rams fans, you don't got to go, berating me it's really close. I think between like coaching staff 7 or 8 all the way to like 14, 15, it's so close. It's so incredibly close. Sean McVay, they sort of fell in the rankings a bit because of sort of the reports and the rumors coming out about Sean McVay in particular, about how he seemingly is looking to step away from the team. So it's like, is there a mental aspect there? Is there just a lack of commitment as what he used to have to the craft and to the game planning and everything? Is the state of the roster going to just sort of be like, this year doesn't really mean anything. I'll just stick around for who knows what is going on. I'm not saying that Sean McVay doesn't have a work ethic, but I am saying that once you sort of get into the mentality of that you're done, it's hard to get really back into being 100% committed the way that you need to be. He's brought in Mike LaFleur to be the offensive coordinator after he spent 2 years with the Jets, which is, systemically, it makes sense. But with how horrific that Jets offense was last year, you wonder sort of what the what the motive is here. I'm not saying Mike LaFleur is a bad coach. I think that putting him with McVay to sort of guide him, maybe he'll sharpen the edges a bit there for him, because he was sort of away from that with a defensive-minded head coach in Robert Saleh. So I guess maybe he didn't have a full grasp on the position to truly just be the sole proprietor of the offense. Now he comes in, he's sort of Robin to the Batman that is Sean McVay for the offensive side of the ball. So maybe this will end up working out more in the long term, but it's also maybe more of a, just because of the state of the roster and the state of the team, how quickly does this become a let's integrate for the future more so than trying to win right now? And I think very quickly in the year we're going to see, I'd say about halfway through the year probably, we'll see maybe transitioning away from trying to win now and simply just trying to put some younger guys in a position to maybe show that they can succeed and that they can learn the offense in real time and learn the scheme in real time and develop in real time. There are certainly pieces on this offense that could greatly benefit from that. And then, I don't assume injuries, like I said at the top, but you don't know what you're going to get out of Matthew Stafford at this point. You sort of, I would say you got him at his last truly great moment, which was the first year that he was there. But really, I think a bulk of the pressure is going on defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, who's used to be a head coach way back in the day. He took over for John Gruden for the Buccaneers and has been a DC, I think, really ever since. Bounced around from a couple teams since then. If this defense finishes in the top 25, I'd say the top 20, he should have a statue built for him outside of SoFi Stadium, because when we get to this roster, boy, does he have his work cut out for him. There's a lot of pressure on him this year to get first and second year players up to speed really quickly. He lost Jalen Ramsey. He lost Bobby Wagner. He lost even like Leonard Floyd. Even Greg Gaines kind of had an okay year last year, though I think it was a little overrated. But it's somebody who was at least very familiar with the defense and familiar with the speed of the NFL and was familiar with working alongside a guy like Aaron Donald. Now Aaron Donald is just pretty much going to be surrounded by rookies and second-year players at every level. And then you got the linebacking group, which is really just one veteran who's okay. Then you got the secondary, which is literally the only veteran in it, is Jordan Fuller. So Morris is going to have so much work ahead of him in these OTAs and these mini camps and this training camp. And this is one of those few teams where when I was going over the positional groups and who's going to start, I was looking at going like, this defense could look like anything. It's one, a lot of the teams, you sort of get an idea. You can sort of see, like, maybe you could probably accurately project 9 starters on the offense and defense. I feel like you could probably do that just by looking at the names, looking at the roster, looking at their depth chart, and be like, there's 9 starters here, and then there's maybe some competition here, some competition there. On this Rams defense, it's a crapshoot, man. Even situationally, passing down front fours, rushing down front fours, Morris is going to have to use every single bit of his intelligence, of his football IQ, of his coaching ability, and his experience to figure out a starting 11, to figure out, to really get like 20 guys who he can trust to be part of some sort of, defensive rotation on the defensive line and the secondary. It might be a long year for them on defense trying to figure this out, which I think ultimately is going to be the cause of their downfall more than anything else. But, man, with that said, he's in a perfect position to make a case to be the number 1 head coaching candidate next offseason if this defense does anything remotely good outside of what Aaron Donald is going to produce. So there's a lot of potential here for the coaching staff to succeed, but just not a lot for this roster because it is so poor. So let's start the player grades with the offense and the quarterback position. It's Matthew Stafford, 79. Again, not trying to predict injuries or anything like that, but you sort of got to assume, all things considered, he's kind of on the down end. He's going quickly downhill. He just keeps picking up injuries throughout his career, and you wonder, does it continue this year? How much of a contributor can he be? With the players around him, how well could he play? There's just a lot of factors in here. Stetson Bennett gets a 64 as a backup as the rookie. I think he was a 4th-round pick this year. He sort of has, people have been saying he's the closest thing that we might get to Brock Purdy this year, which putting him with Sean McVay, I think, is the only thing that can make that true. I just don't believe in him at the next level, but I do think that Sean McVay can put him in positions to succeed if he needs to do it for a couple of games this year. But a lot of other things also have to work out, and the things that people got to be healthy. Stafford, I really liked Stafford for a lot of his career. I thought he was extremely underrated. Came in, won the Super Bowl. I think got his due, so to speak, after winning that Super Bowl that he'd sort of deserved maybe a couple years prior, being on some really bad Lions teams. And frankly, when you look at those rosters, overachieving. Even when he had Megatron and some of the better players that were on that roster for a while there, they overachieved. And a lot of it on the offense side of the ball was because of Stafford's ability. I just don't know that he's got it anymore. I don't know if he can be trusted. And there's just a lot more quarterbacks now than, say, 2 or 3 years ago that I would probably rather have starting than him. It's just the nature of the beast. Some guys fall off. Some guys can play till they're 45 like Brady, and some guys just, they peak and then it's a quick drop. And Stafford, just because of the injury concerns, he's a prime candidate for me to be the one that sort of falls sharply off that cliff. He isn't a rushing threat, that's for sure, but they do have some pretty solid backfield coming in here. I really like 3 of their backs in particular in terms on first and second down. Cam Akers, he gets an 80 from me, which is a pretty good grade, considering how I've sort of tiered these grading systems. Then you got Kyron Williams, who was a rookie last year. He gets a 75. And then Zach Evans, who they drafted this year, for me, gets a 71. I'm not sure that Cam Akers, he had that great rookie performance. And ever since then, it's been, injuries and, spot duty here and there. Maybe he can become a true bell cow running back and keep trending upwards. But I think that, some time's gone by. He's coming towards the end of his contract. They have drafted 2 running backs in the middle rounds now, 2 years in a row, to sort of create a committee of running backs. So I think his spot may be in jeopardy unless he really shows out in these first couple of weeks of the year. I think they'll find ways to include these other backs in there. I think Zach Evans has a real shot potentially of taking over completely. Then we go look at the receiving aspect of it. They got Ronnie Rivers, who is probably their best receiving back. So we could have really a 4-back rotation here with the Rams, just based upon the variety of skill sets that they have and that they exude. And I think that can keep people fresh. I think really the 3 backs listed there, Akers, Williams, and Evans, are the best first and second down options. So if you see certain guys struggle, I think there's enough depth there to keep a true between the tackles rushing threat on the field at all times, which could result in them stealing third down snaps as well. I think obviously Zach Evans not so much compared to a guy like Kyron Williams or Cam Akers, who I sort of grade out the same in terms of their ability on third down. They have slightly different skill sets, but overall the rating sort of ends up being the same. And I think that a screen game could be effective here. I wouldn't count on any of these running backs going out running routes or anything like that. I think that's mostly going to be a receiver tight end thing, which they have worked on. But again, because they committed so much to the win now aspect the last couple of years, they haven't really been able to pick high-end talent in this draft. It's a lot of guys they're picking for upside, for scheme fit, etc. So now we're going to look at the receiver room, and Cooper Kupp, like I said, he still gets a 90 from me. He's still a high-level receiver in this game. He's still, top 3 or 4, at least top 5 probably at the position going into this year. The question marks come from pretty much everyone else around him. Cooper Kupp, if he's healthy, he's 115 catches a year, 1,300 yards, 1,400 yards. It's Van Jefferson who really needs to step up here. He's finally coming into a situation where he's the solidified wide receiver 2 on the team. He needs to be... This is his moment finally. They didn't really give up on him just because they were so deep in this room before. And then when he did see a lot of playing time, it wasn't really with Matthew Stafford. So this is his real chance here to solidify himself as at least a true wide receiver 2 in the NFL, which there's no shame in that. And then there's Tutu Atwell, who's had quietly an impressive season last year when he did get on the field. His size has always sort of been an issue that has perhaps kept him off the field. But I think if you get the ball in his hands quickly, and some tunnel screens and stuff like that, you could really use his abilities, his quick twitch, his quick shiftiness, could be really effective in this offense, and also get the ball in Matthew Stafford's hands quickly, which will preserve his health throughout the year much more, because less time you're spending in the pocket, less likely you're already get hit. And then Tyler Higbee gets a 76. He's like that solid middle of the pack, maybe above average tight end and 3 down aspect. Definitely somebody that any team would like to have, because he's solid. There's a lot of tight ends in the NFL that are like that. So he doesn't really stand out. He'll have a big game every once a month. He'll bust out a big game, but he will disappear throughout the year. But that's, outside of the true top end tight ends, that's sort of true for them all, right? Because sometimes the game is, you want the deep game is what's working. Maybe the screen game or the running game is what's working, and the tight end sort of gets forgotten about and lost because they are running a lot of like the short, dirty routes across the middle. And if a team's really solid in the middle, then a tight end could probably not execute all that much unless you're talking about like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews types. But I certainly, there's opportunity here for people to step up. We look at the depth. They got Puka Nacua, who they drafted. He gets a pretty good receiving grade. They do have Ben Skoranek still, who is basically Cooper Kupp's backup. I could see him really being used on, those first downs, second and shorts, when they're going to be running the ball, because he is a great blocker and he'll go in there and he'll do all that dirty work. So I think that's really where his opportunities are going to come from. They signed DeMarcus Robinson, who gets a pretty good receiving grade. You just don't really know what you're getting from him at this point. He never really became what people were projecting him to be based upon his the measurables and the tangibles that he's had. Lance McCutcheon is going to be fighting for a roster spot. Then you look at the tight ends. Hunter Long as a receiver, he hasn't had an opportunity to really prove himself. And when he's gotten the opportunities, he hasn't really done a whole lot. He was part of the Jalen Ramsey trade. So I guess there's some sort of assumption he's going to be used to a degree. But they still have Bryson Hopkins there as well. They drafted Davis Allen, who I just like in the receiving game a little bit better than Hunter Long. So it's going to be an uphill battle, I think, for him. I think the fact that he was involved in the Ramsey trade shows that they see an upside in him, which we could see play out throughout the year, and then his grade going into next year would be much higher. And then getting Davis Allen was an interesting decision, just based upon the fact that you have Hunter Long, you have Bryson Hopkins. What does it mean for Higbee, who I think just signed not that long ago? Maybe his contract's expired. Maybe I'm mixing up a couple years into one. But also I understand the aspect of, you have a weak weapons room outside of Cooper Kupp that you just want to throw names at the wall, and then whoever sticks, and there's not a lot of, you haven't really committed a whole lot to where now if people flop, they're easy to get rid of. I think that's also a strategy that they've been using the last 2 years in particular when it comes to the receivers and tight end room. Now we're going to look at the offensive line, and we'll start with pass blocking. And the best pass blocker, really, for me, right out the gate, is Steve Avila. He's the rookie. Granted, we'll get to the other aspect of his game in the run game, but this was a spot they needed to fill, and I think they did a good job filling it for this aspect of it. The tackles are what they are. Noboom's really got to step up. Havenstein is sort of downward trend. Brian Allen had really one good year. It was the Super Bowl year and hasn't shown anything since. Logan Bruce is somebody they drafted last year who's going to get the start here at guard, even though maybe it should be Coleman Shelton. Just not a great offensive line really at all for the passing game. I like Coleman Shelton as a potential to jump in and be a starter at center or guard. I like Warren McClendon, who they picked up as a rookie out of Georgia to be a tackle. I think Noboom's really the one that could be in danger, because if he really struggles, he doesn't really have the pedigree that Havenstein has. And I think you know what you're going to get out of Rob Havenstein. I think that if McClendon does show a lot of potential and development throughout this year, I think that it would make them more open to getting rid of Havenstein going into next year, and then McClendon can end up starting. I think coming out the gates, he's a better pass blocker for sure. Coleman Shelton I think he could play his way into starting lineup, like I said. I don't mind the depth on this offensive line. Alaric Jackson, I think, is a solid pass blocker. I think Tremaine Ankrum is a solid pass blocker. I think he could find his way into being one of the starting guards as well. I think we could be in a world, especially if Brian Allen, can't stay healthy, that Steve Avila maybe goes to center, and then you have Tremaine Ankrum and Coleman Shelton as the two guards. I think that there's a world where that is a possibility. As we move on now to the run blocking, this is where we see some significant improvement from the tackles. I do like them a little bit better in the run blocking aspect. Steve Avila as a run blocker is absolutely horrific. This is the one aspect of his game he really needs to work on. I thought he was bad at it. Like I said at the top of the video, I sort of look at the PFF grades to sort of confirm certain things about players that I think, and it was all confirmed. He was not good run blocking up. Brian Allen's a better run blocker than a pass blocker. Logan Bruce really hasn't shown a whole lot in general, so it's really hard to really grade him out for that. This is where the tackles really come in. And then you look at the depth, and this is what I mean about McClendon. McClendon is also, he's not as good of a run blocker. That's where, Havenstein and Noteboom, I think, on average, are a better player, obviously, than him right now. But he's got a lot of potential here to really build on it. Coleman Shelton, not a great run blocker. Tremaine Ankrum, not a great run blocker, which is why they probably lose out on being starters, that there's just a little bit more upside on the other two guys in particular. Alaric Jackson, sort of the same story as McClendon. Sort of the same in pass blocking as the other tackles, but not as good against the run. So the law of averages has him on the bench as well. Though I think because he was sort of this hybrid offensive lineman when he came into the league, it would take a little bit longer for him to develop. So there is a world where I think Alaric Jackson does get on the field and maybe becomes a starter in the NFL. I think him being sort of the swing tackle right now on this roster, at least I would assume so, at least throughout the early part of this season, he's got a chance to maybe get some playing time during games and get on the field. He sort of has settled in as a tackle more so than an interior offensive lineman. And then just the way that they've signed other players on the team, that seems to be the case. But the depth isn't bad. It's not bad offensive line depth. It's just they're not great either. Like there's no true great player on this offensive line anymore. Like we could have said a couple of years ago, even when it came to Havenstein and Whitworth. In particular, Brian Allen. Allen and Havenstein have sort of started the decline here. Whitworth obviously retired a while ago. So it's going to be, again, another rebuilding aspect of another room here on the offensive line, which is important, which kind of drags the offense down in general. So just running over the position summaries again here. You can see the offensive line, the starter 67.4, the depth gets 67. So there's a lot of mixing and matching they can do here to really optimize the offensive line, at least in terms of their pass blocking. If certain guys can develop their run blocking ability, some veteran players I think could maybe find their way to the bench. Not a lot going on in this running game in general, though, for this offense outside of the depth of the running back room. They got some decent blockers at receiver. Kupp and Skoranek, I think, could be a good 1-2 duo, but they also play the same position, so you kind of only have one of them on the field at a time for most of a game. Not much out of their tight end room. They don't have a running threat at quarterback, really. Stetson Bennett is whatever, but he's not starting, so you're not going to put him on the field just to present perhaps a threat of running the ball. And this team was always sort of built around passing, and now that they've lost a lot of their depth and guys are starting to trend downwards, they've sort of lost the identity of their offense altogether. So overall, they have the 28th offense in the NFL. They have the 20th pass offense. And if this offensive line can find a way to improve and perform a little bit better, they could find their way into the top 15 in pass offense. But their rush offense is just so horrendous. And they don't really have a quarterback that can enhance it all that much. Their running back room is good, but not like top level. Their offensive line in terms of run blocking ability is just not good at all. They don't have good complements at tight end. It gets, again, like I said earlier, gets a little wishy-washy with the receiver help on the outside. So it really drags the grade down to what it is, which is 28. Now we're going to go over the defense and talk about the pass rush. And this is, it's really interesting how they built their edge and interior defensive line group. We'll start with Aaron Donald. Still gets a 91 grade pass rush, one of the best, if not the best interior pass rusher. And until he shows differently, we'll say last year was an anomaly. The guy next to him on passing downs is going to be an interesting case study because right now I look at it being Kobe Turner, who I think was one of the steals of the draft. I think he had the potential to be a first-round pick. I think he grades out extremely well in both aspects of being a defensive lineman. I think his hybrid status maybe is what made him fall down boards a bit, but I think he can get a lot of work on the interior on passing downs, and then on rushing downs, I think he can play that 3-4 defensive end. I think he can maybe even get some edge work as well, just because, this edge group, which I have two rookies out here, Nick Hampton and O'Shawn Mathis, who are both drafted this year, and I'm looking at them going like, these are your two best edge rushers for pass rush. Like, they really are. So you got the potential that you got Aaron Donald and 3 rookies on the field at once for this front four. It is very possible. Now, as we move on to the depth, you'll see it even more. Michael Hecht, like, why? Daniel Hardy. They drafted Byron Young as well, who I thought was extremely overdrafted and overrated. They clearly see something in him. He was the highest of the draft picks between, I think, the 3. I think he was drafted even before Nick Hampton was, and definitely before O'Shawn Mathis was. So he's going to find his way into the field for sure. As sort of probably the 3rd edge rusher. So they're going to have really 4 edge rushers probably at the beginning of this year, and 3 of them are going to be rookies. And then you go into the interior defensive line, you got nothing in terms of a interior pass rush there. You got a bunch of guys who are really all undersized. Bobby Brown is probably the nose tackle. So it is not a deep room. And you're going to be seeing a lot of guys with not a lot of experience getting on that field. And Aaron Donald, like I said, is going to have to do a lot of work. So this is what I was meaning about the defensive line against the run. Michael Hecht is probably the best edge guy against the run. His experience and his discipline is going to be really helpful. Aaron Donald, though I don't grade him that high against the run. It's just not what he does. He's still very effective, and he makes everyone else around him better. I think that Kobe Turner is a better guy against the run just coming in, and that's where I would sort of have him playing, is maybe being a first down edge player and let Bobby Brown, who's really the closest thing to a nose tackle they have at the time of this recording, find his way onto the field. I think that it's the best combination for the front four. And then if you're going to go, I think you could also have these 3 there, Donald, Brown, and Turner as your interior defensive linemen on first down with Hecht on the edge. And then you get Nick Hampton to play the other edge, I would say. Sort of keep him on the field. Again, Byron Young, I never understood it. I don't get it. I still don't. He'll probably see some playing time on 3rd down to start, but I think he's got a lot of improving to do. I think that he's going to have to develop quite quickly in order for that to not maybe be one of the more overdrafted players who in this year's draft. But you see it there. There's 3 rookie edge guys just there alone. And then you got Kobe Turner, who's sort of like a hybrid of both. So it could be a lot of inexperience on the field in general. But I think Nick Hampton does have the best opportunity based upon his skill set to be the biggest impact of this edge group. And then Kobe Turner, sort of the number 2 guy, depending on where they decide to use him. And then on the interior, Marcus Copeland. This is another combination that they could probably use because Copeland is good against the run, but he's undersized. So maybe you go Donald, Brown, and Copeland as your 3 interior guys, and you have Kobe Turner and Hecht, or Kobe Turner and Hampton as your 2 edge guys on that first down. Or, a 2nd and short situation where you're going to have more of a running based defense. It's just, you want to figure out who your best guys are against teams that are going to throw the ball, because I think that when we start to look at their secondary in particular, teams are going to want to take advantage of that. They're going to try to do what they can to take Aaron Donald out of the game. And if they can accomplish that, somebody else is going to need to step up where this defense will get picked apart. But there is potential on at least against in terms of the running game and the rush defense. So we're looking at the linebackers here against the pass, and it's not good. It's not good. You got Jones and Rosenboom here as the linebackers in the passing game. I could theoretically see them going to one linebacker in this scenario and bringing down some of the bigger safeties. Their depth, DeAndre Square is a rookie. He has probably the best potential to be the linebacker too. Jake Hummel's just really a special teams guy. And then when we look at them in the run game, it's where it gets a lot better. Jones gets a huge upgrade. Rosenboom gets a huge upgrade there at 70. So, again, against the run, they're not that bad. And then, DeAndre Square, I like him a lot better against the run. This is where he really gets an opportunity. He's going to have a chance to compete for that linebacker 2 spot, which he could easily win at this point. And because they have so many young rookie players that they've committed to this defense on these like late day 2, day 3 picks that are all going to get humongous opportunities. There's a lot of potential to get a lot of value out of their day 3 picks just because they have so many holes on the defense. So they could get a lot of snaps out of these young guys. And that this front 7, I think, is a perfect example of that. So now we're going into their defensive backs with the pass coverage. And, you see Jordan Fuller there gets 70. Kobe Durant, 74. Durant really fit this defense in general. He was like the Darius Williams replacement. Then you got Robert Rochelle. And you got Trey Hodges Tomlinson, who's a rookie coming in. This is bad. This is bad. Kobe Durant should not be your best corner in pass coverage, and there shouldn't be this much of a skill gap between the two. Same thing with Fuller as a safety. I think he's been like safety 3 for the longest time, and now he's coming in. He's got to be number 1 safety on the team. Look at some of their depth. They got nothing. They have absolutely nothing at the cornerback position in terms of depth. Darion Kendrick should not be on the field. They drafted Tamarcus Davis, or they picked him up as an undrafted guy. Whatever. Same thing with Rashad Torrance, who I actually like. I think Rashad Torrance can sneak his way onto the field. Quindell Johnson, another young player who just, has to find his way, I think, in the run game. Russ Yeast is like the only guy with any type of snaps underneath his belt at the safety position for this roster, which, at least in the depth aspect, so it's just not good, guys. It's not good. And it only gets worse in the run support aspect. Like, look at this. Look at this. I don't think I'm being bad. I don't think I'm being like biased or anything with this. They got really good safeties against the run. Their safety room against the run, we'll look at their depth. Very good. Very, very good against the run. Johnston, Yeast, even LeCount is like a decent depth piece, but how many guys that are just safeties are you going to put on the field? You got safeties, you got slot guys. How many of them can you play at once without completely getting shredded in the passing game more than you would get shredded already? You know what I mean? Like, it's so horrific. We're going to need to see Darion Kendrick really step up. He's going to have to really step up his game because he needs to get on the field over a guy like Robert Rochelle. He needs to get on the field and stay on the field. Hodges Tomlinson needs to play much better than you would expect a late round rookie to play early in the year. He needs to come out and be like hopefully half of what Tariq Woolen was. There's just no there's so little upside. There is so little upside on this defensive back room. it tanks the whole defense. And that's what I mean when I say the rookies and the young players on that front four in particular someone's going to have to break out, because these offenses early on they're going to focus on taking away Aaron Donald, and then this back end is in jeopardy. So just running over the depth again, and you can see it against the pass. It's the interior rush gets an 85 between Donald and Kobe Turner. Actually, I like the interior rush, but you look at the depth. No depth. There's no depth on this defense at all, really. Against the run, that's really where they're at their best. They got a decent interior against the run. I think they can put together a really good base 3-4 front against the run with two quality safeties. If the ball gets outside of those edge players, though, it could be a problem. It could be a real problem. Like I said at the top of this, talking about Morris, the defensive coordinator, if they finish good based upon this, give them a statue. So this is what their defensive summary looks like. The 28th defense in the NFL, and that pass defense is 28th, and it is carried by Aaron Donald. If Aaron Donald gets hurt again, then we're going to see this defense look the way it did last year. If not worse, because there's even less depth and less of a veteran presence and less experience on it than it was last year. So it quickly goes from the 28th defense to easily the worst pass defense in the NFL, maybe ever, at least on paper, with one guy gone. The rush defense can withstand losing Donald because they do have guys who are actually really good at that. They do lose the depth aspect of it, but they also have a lot of guys that are his size that can play in the run game. But I can't imagine what's going to happen to this team if Donald doesn't perform or if Donald gets hurt. He immediately, just based upon how this is all working out, he might be the most important player in the NFL this season. Even on a team like the Rams that even with him might not even be that good, are probably not going to be that good. One or two games might flip the other way and they might, sneak themselves into at least being competitive in a weak conference, but he's talking about the most valuable player in the league. This might be the year where him and Patrick Mahomes are looking at each other going, which one's which in terms of who's the most important person, because their value and how much losing them would hurt their teams is almost immeasurable how significant. So we take a look at their schedule, and there is a bit of a gauntlet here. San Francisco, Cincinnati, Philly, Dallas. That's a rough start. Even Seattle in week 1 in Seattle. The Colts, you don't really know what you're going to get out of them. I do have them sweeping the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are significantly worse than them. I got them stealing some wins here. Pittsburgh, splitting with Seattle, and then stealing a game at home against Cleveland. But man, I mean, they got to play Baltimore. They got to play the Saints. They got to play the Giants, the Bengals, Niners twice, Eagles, Cowboys. It's a rough go for them. It is a rough go for them. And I got them, 5 wins. I think it's pretty damn good. I think on the high end, I think they could find 7 wins. Because they do have Washington in there. They do have the Colts in there. They do have the Packers in there. What are the Packers going to look like? So I think maybe on the high end, they could steal 7 wins, which is a huge overachievement based upon how bad this roster is. But they have to stay healthy. They have to have these rookies and second-year players, particularly on the defense, really step up and perform to at least the grades that I gave them, which some of those guys, I think especially Kobe Turner, I'm very high on. So there's a lot of optimism in him that if it's not seen could really drag down, the overall defense and what their performance is projected by me. You pick up an injury in the secondary, it could be a disaster, especially if it's Kobe Durant, who's like the only competent guy in pass coverage that can be measured right now in the secondary. And so, like, you get into the situation on the high end, yeah, they can get 7 wins. On the low end, they're losing to Pittsburgh, they're losing to Seattle, they're losing to Cleveland. Arizona might be the only team they're capable of beating on this roster. Arizona and Washington really might be the only 2 teams on their schedule they can possibly beat. And if they win all those games, that's the only 3 wins. So there's a lot of range with them. I think them and Carolina, they both have the potential to outperform, but they both also have the potential, I think the Rams definitely more so, have a huge opportunity. I say opportunity like it's a good thing, to significantly underperform based on this schedule. So just to recap, they're 5-12, third in the division, 12th in the conference, 26th in the league. They do have the 13th best coaching staff, but they just don't have the talent roster that they had 2 years ago, even 3 years ago. It's just not there. This is a huge roster turnover. You saw it with the guys on the defense, especially a lot of rookies and second-year players. On the offense, you're getting a lot of new faces in there. Some 2 really young running backs to go with Akers, who might be on his way out now. That is, you don't pay running backs. What are you getting out of that receiver room outside of Cooper Kupp? What are you getting out of the tight end room outside of Tyler Higbee? What are you getting out of this offensive line in general? So many question marks, so little upside in so many parts of this roster and so many of the position groups that it's really hard to foresee anything other than a high-level performance from this coaching staff, creating opportunities for this roster and this team to even remotely be competitive for most of this season. And there you have it, my 26th team in my 2023 Deep Dive series. It's the Los Angeles Rams. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't enjoy it, I hope that you hate watched it to the point where you're going to comment and help out with the algorithms anyway. And even if you did hate it, thumbs up, because, it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of work. 32 teams. Predicting every game. Help a brother out. I'm trying out here. I'm trying out here like the rest of us. And, I got more videos here, and the playlist for this series is there. And I hope to see you guys back for the next video, where you can either leave something positive or just trash me, which is fine also. And I will see you guys next time.